treasures, more precious than gold. Cameras are rolling, the drama is bold. In the heat of the moment, the truth is told. This is the rundown, where the sparks fly. Breaking the news as the moments pass by. Hey! Hey!
Welcome to the Deep Dive. You've sent us quite a stack of sources. We've got newspaper reports, some deep YouTube analyses, all buzzing about the Chicago Bulls offseason.
That's right. And today, our mission is really to cut through all that noise. We want to unpack the Bulls' actual official roster moves.
Okay.
And then dive deep into those lingering questions. You know, players like Josh GiddEy, Nikola Vucevic.
Big names, big questions.
Exactly. The goal is figuring out what these decisions, or maybe the lack of decisions, really mean for the team's future.
So as we dig into this, what's the real story here? You know, for the Bulls, their strategy, where they actually stand in the East right now. Let's find out. First up, the first big piece of official news we have, Lonzo Ball. He's been traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers for Isaac Okoro.
Yeah, this one just got finalized July 7th, 2025. And the interesting little detail here, according to reports, is how Lonzo himself found out.
Oh.
Apparently he was actually on vacation in Fiji, no less.
Wow.
Gets texts from Cavs coaches at 3 a.m. local time, which, you know, is 7 a.m. Chicago time.
Yeah.
And he ends up confirming the news for himself on X, formerly Twitter. Can you imagine? Waking up to that kind of news on a tropical island.
Finding out via text at 3 a.m. on vacation in Fiji. His agent must have had an interesting morning. This trade, obviously, it's another chapter for Ball. Seems like he gets moved via trade everywhere he goes.
It does seem that way, yeah.
But okay, for the Cavaliers, you've got Darius Garland sidelined. Ty Jerome's gone to the Grizzlies. This gives Lonzo a real, immediate chance to make an impact, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Especially, some sources are saying, with the East maybe being in its weakest state in recent memory, how big is that opportunity, and what does he really bring Cleveland?
Well, you hit it right there.
Yeah.
The opportunity is huge because of what he brings. It's that defensive presence, which they need.
Right.
I mean, even in limited games last season, one source pointed out Ball was the Bulls' best plus defender. Okay, it was only 35 games, but still.
So it counts.
Yeah, that kind of defense plus his playmaking, it could be a real luxury addition for a team like the Cavs. Maybe looking to capitalize on what seems like a surprisingly open path to the finals right now.
Okay, so the Bull trade, that's done. Signed, sealed, delivered. But it feels like the Bulls still have this massive puzzle piece just sitting there. The future of Josh GiddEy. Restricted free agent. Now, they did officially re-sign Trey Jones. That was a 3-year, $24 million deal, team option on year 3. But GiddEy, still no extension. What's the holdup? Sources say talks are positive.
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it really seems to boil down to GiddEy himself and what he wants.
Okay.
Reports say he's really holding out for a deal that looks a lot like Jalen Suggs' extension with Orlando. You know, the 5 years, $150.5 million, averages out to $30 million a year.
Right. Suggs was picked just ahead of him in the draft.
Exactly. GiddEy was 6th. Suggs was 5th in 2021. So GiddEy feels, understandably perhaps, that he should be in that same pay grade. Especially after, he had a monster second half last season.
He really did.
From February 1st on, he was averaging 20 points, 9.5 rebounds, 8 assists a game. Stellar numbers.
Okay, and then just to make things spicier, boom, this huge trade goes down. Utah, Miami, the Clippers, and suddenly the Jazz have a ton of cap space.
A ton, yeah. They cleared $22 million right off the bat. Could be up to maybe $28.4 million if they waive some non-guaranteed guys.
Wow.
Maybe even more, like around $32 million if they cut Kevin Love and Kyle Anderson too. This puts them squarely in the mix to make a big offer sheet for a restricted free agent, like GiddEy or maybe Kuminga, Cam Thomas.
So the key insight from that whole situation is how it just completely flips the script on the GiddEy talks, right?
Totally rewrites the leverage conversation.
Yeah.
Before this, the Bulls might have assumed, maybe a little complacently, that no one else really had the space to challenge them seriously on GiddEy's price. Now, you've got Danny Ainge and the Jazz with the financial firepower to drop a huge offer sheet, potentially up to, $36 million a year for an RFA?
That's serious money.
And some analysts are saying, look, the Jazz roster, their needs, especially for a starting point guard, GiddEy could actually be a legitimate fit there. This isn't just some, empty threat to push the Bulls. It feels like a real possibility now.
So what's the bottom line for the Bulls? They can match any offer GiddEy gets. That's the rule for RFAs.
Right. They have matching rights.
But will they? One analyst we saw thinks the Bulls would match almost anything, like even up to $40 million a year. Cites their reluctance maybe to let assets walk, maybe a history of being a bit cheap in early talk.
That's one perspective, yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of the never let an asset go for nothing philosophy.
But other reports are saying, hang on, paying that much, $40 million a year for GiddEy, could seriously handcuff their flexibility down the road. Are they really willing to that high? Or is this just, negotiation tactics?
It's tough to say. Some sources are whispering that if the Bulls had just offered maybe $28 million a year last fall, this whole thing might have been done already. GiddEy might have been locked up.
Hindsight, always 20/20. Okay, let's shift from one contract drama to another player whose future is, well, very much up in the air. Nikola Vucevic. It's been surprisingly quiet around him. No real movement, not even many rumors.
Yeah, that silence around Vucevic is really noticeable, and it makes you ask what's actually going on there.
Right.
He's got the $21.4 million owed in his final year. You hear some chatter from national folks, fans maybe, about a buyout. But sources close to the team say zero chance. Absolutely zero.
And why is that?
It seems to come straight down to ownership. Jerry Reinsdorf. Sources consistently paint him as a, let's say, fiscally conservative businessman.
Penny pinching.
That's the term used, yeah. One quote was, he shudders at the thought of throwing away money. So paying Vucevic millions not to play for them, apparently that's a non-starter, really tells you all you need to know about buyout talk.
Okay, so buyout is off the table. And even though Vucevic, he's almost 35, has some defensive issues we know about, he's still seen as a very serviceable player, right? A starting level center.
Definitely. Still productive offensively.
And buying him out wouldn't even really help their cap situation much. They'd still be over the cap after signing GiddEy, presumably. The only real benefit might be a little more room with the mid-level exception that tool teams use to sign guys when over the cap.
Right, a slightly bigger mid-level. But you look at the free agent market right now, it's pretty thin. So is that small extra flexibility even worth eating Vucevic's salary? Probably not, from their perspective.
So if no buyout, what about a trade?
Seems like the logical path.
Logical, yes. Easy. Apparently not. The clear takeaway from multiple sources here seems to be that the Bulls have this habit, maybe historically, of overvaluing their own players in trade talks.
Ah, the classic GM trap.
Could be. And it's really hurting them with someone like Vucevic. I mean, the guy's a walking double-double, had maybe his most efficient offensive season ever last year. But still, minimal trade buzz.
Why? Just the asking price.
Seems like it. Sources suggest they were asking for a first-round pick for him back at the trade deadline.
For Vucevic? Yeah. When realistically, maybe a couple of second-rounders was the actual market value. So because they aimed too high then, now they might have to settle for pennies on the dollar, as one source put it.
Oof. Okay, but then, completely out of left field, an NBA insider, Jeff Weinbach, throws the Detroit Pistons into the conversation. An under-the-radar suitor. That feels unexpected.
It does raise an eyebrow, yeah. The thinking apparently is that the Pistons might value Vucevic's experience, his stretch five ability to maybe play alongside Jalen Duren in some kind of double big lineup, address their front court depth.
Interesting idea. What would a trade look like?
Well, the name being floated in a proposed deal is Isaiah Stewart coming back to Chicago for Vucevic.
Okay, Stewart, younger, physical, defensive guy.
All true. Stewart's 24, brings toughness, but his contract, that's the sticking point. He's got 3 years and $45 million left. And some analysts look at that deal and call it, pretty bluntly, one of the worst contracts in the NBA.
Ouch. That bad.
Apparently, that's the view from some corners. So for the Bulls, taking on Stewart would basically wipe out about $15 million of that potential $85 million in expiring money they could have by 2026. It limits their future flexibility significantly.
Right. So one analyst you mentioned would rather just let Vucevic play out his deal.
Yeah, basically said they'd rather ride out Vucevic's last year, let him walk as an unrestricted free agent in 2026, than take on Stewart's longer, potentially negative value contract. It's a tough spot for a team supposedly trying to build something new.
Okay, so zooming out, big picture. The Bulls' approach this offseason seems very Methodical. That's the word used. Not a lot of official moves beyond Ball-Okoro and re-signing Jones.
Methodical is one word for it, yeah. GM Arturas Karnisovas is reportedly being more aggressive in opening conversations. You hear that buzz?
But,
as one source aptly put it, activity is not accomplishment. Just talking doesn't mean you're actually improving the team.
right. And when you look around the East, I mean, connect this to the bigger picture. You see teams like the Hawks, the Cavs, Pistons, Magic, even the Bucks. They've been way more aggressive. Big trades, significant signings.
Or much more active, yeah.
It really makes you ask that question. Have the Bulls just fallen behind? Are they moving too slow while everyone else is making moves?
That's the fear, right?
Yeah.
Are they getting left in the dust because they're being perhaps too methodical or maybe too hesitant?
And you hear critics, like Bill Simmons, for example, basically saying the Bulls have been, quote, criminally misused assets since Jordan left, suggesting nothing good is going to happen with these owners.
Harsh words.
Yeah. And he and others, they point to the lack of a clear star, a definite guy to build around, unlike the players you see on these other teams making aggressive moves. What's the Bulls' answer to that? What's their narrative?
Well, the narrative, or maybe it's more of a hope at this point, seems to center heavily on Matas Buzelis.
The rookie from last year?
Exactly. Reports say the Bulls are putting a lot of faith, a lot of resources into developing him. They seem to view him as a potential face of the franchise.
Yeah.
Some whispers even mention all-NBA type talent down the line.
Wow, that's ambitious.
It is, especially considering, he only played about 18 minutes a game last season. So projecting him into that role right now, it's a huge question mark, as one source said.
Definitely a leap of faith. And there's another financial cloud looming too, right? Coby White.
Yep, Coby White. He's on that expiring $12 million deal this year. Good value contract right now.
Very good value.
But he's expected to command something like $25 to $27 million per year on his next contract. That's a major financial decision the Bulls have to make very, very soon. Can they afford him, GiddEy, and build elsewhere?
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, it feels pretty clear the Bulls are really at a crossroads, a pivotal moment. You've got these big contract questions hanging out there, potentially tough trade decisions to make, and all this pressure on young guys like Buzelis to develop fast. The future feels, well, really uncertain.
It does. Yeah. And in an era where, being aggressive in team building seems to be the winning formula, and you layer on top of that the pretty consistent criticism of their ownership.
Yeah.
The real critical insight here might be this.
Yeah.
How long can the Chicago Bulls really afford to just tread water? To stay in this kind of purgatory, bouncing between these merely functional off seasons and just waiting.
Yeah.
Waiting for unproven talent to maybe, possibly, become a true centerpiece while the rest of the conference is actively getting better.
That's the core question. So here's something for you, the listener, to think about or maybe explore on your own. What would it genuinely take? What specific changes, moves, or maybe even philosophies would need to happen for the Chicago Bulls to become a truly special franchise again? And maybe more importantly, who needs to be the driving force to make that happen?